this
Yeah.
idea of like a love that is timeless in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I literally wrote an axis of time, the timelessness of love. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to our podcast, As Above.
So below.
I'm Silver. I'm your co host. My pronouns are she, they, and I'm a Pisces rising.
And I'm Toni. I'm your other co-host. My pronouns are she, her, and I am also a Pisces rising. And we are super excited to have y'all back for another episode. We were gone for a little bit, had a little hiatus, but distance makes the heart grow fonder. So I'm sure this will just make you love us even more. Um, and we are continuing our conversations on the axes with Cancer and Capricorn this episode.
Yeah. So we're currently recording at 4:03 p.m. on October 16th on Sunday. What are current transits, Town?
Oh, okay. Let me pull it up for us. So today, what we have going on, we have Mars in Gemini. I
Mm.
don't, that's going to be going retrograde soon, so that'll be interesting. We have the Sun, Venus, and Mercury in Libra, so very Venusian in the sky right now. We have Jupiter in Aries, and we have Saturn in Aquarius.
Yes, on this beautiful Cancer moon day. So
Oh,
fun. What a great
that's so
time to be
cute.
born.
I'm really happy the moon's in Cancer. I forgot about the moon. Um, I think that'll be great energy for us to talk about what we're going to talk about. So,
Yeah, I
um,
think so too.
look at that.
She's
Look at
at home.
exactly. And then I also want to mention, I think there's gonna be like the Sun and Venus, there's gonna be a Cazimi, I think, in like
Hmm.
the next day or so. And I think this particular like the Sun Venus Cazimi in Libra hasn't happened since like 1860 something. So yeah, a little bit of monumental sky action
Whoa.
going on. That'll be cool. And yeah, Libra season. It's doing Libra things. We released our Libra playlist, which was really cool for Silver and I to give y'all a glimpse into our beautiful music taste. I mean, I think it's a privilege to even be able to experience that. So everybody is
Yeah,
grateful.
you're welcome. You're welcome, Nance.
I've
Um,
definitely been enjoying it myself.
it's
So that's
very much bad. It's giving bad bitch energy. I love it. I feel like it's very uplifting. It's
it's
a
just
good one.
yeah, I just think
Yeah.
that Libra is just like we said before, it's a musical sign. So to put a soundtrack to the Libra season is just such a fun activity. I think everybody should make a little playlist this season, honestly.
Yeah, I remember I do a bunch of different, like I do my Spotify playlist differently every year, but there was one year that I did it based on seasons instead of month,
Oh,
because normally I do
wow.
it by the month. It was just what I was listening to during that season. It wasn't
Right.
like
But I
year.
mean, I feel like that can also be fun too. Like, I think what you're listening to during that season, like there's a chance
Yeah,
it's probably gonna align with like the meaning of
the
that season.
transits and everything that's going on. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
All right, so jumping into this fun Cancer Capricorn
Energy.
energy, let's get down to business.
Let's
Get down
get
to
down to
business.
business. That's what Saturn would want us to do.
Exactly.
So yeah, Cancer and Capricorn, we're going to start off with just sharing where that falls in our chart. So for me, Cancer is in my fifth whole sign house, and I do not have any planets there. And then Capricorn is in my 11th whole sign house, and I do not have any planets there. However, Um, also just as a disclaimer for people who might not have planets in a house, because not every house is going to occupy a planet. You can still tap into that energy just by looking at the significations of that house and then also looking at the ruler of that house. And so don't fret if you feel like you can't tap into that energy through one of the astrological bodies. There's other ways to get into it, and these signs are all a part of us in some way. So
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the time people will assume that because you don't have a placement or a planet in that house that they don't affect you the same way. But like regardless, I feel like that's also the point of this season for us is to show how interconnected it all is and how um it shows up regardless of if we have a planet in that sign or not.
right.
So like, depending on where it is. So for me, Toni uses full sign houses, but I use Placidus. So for me, Cancer is in my fourth house. And then Capricorn is in my 10th house. So yeah, like just seeing like what those houses rule and like how you may embody that sign regarding those subjects. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, so now that we've gone over where those signs fall in our charts, we're going to, as always, give y'all the rundown of their building blocks with our handy dandy visual, starting off with Cancer. Um, the symbol underneath Cancer is the glyph for it. And yeah, it looks like a little crab, kind of. I think that's what it's supposed to look like, but it also
Yeah.
looks like two eyes looking at you. I don't know. And
Oh
then
my gosh.
you mentioned before that it kind of looks like two halves of a moon, which I thought was kind of cute.
Yeah.
That interpretation. But yeah, what a great symbol.
I
Um,
see different things every time I look at these things.
I know, right? Listen, we could have a whole episode just like analyzing the symbols.
The glyphs.
Okay, Cancer is a water sign. Other water signs include Pisces and Scorpio. The modality is cardinal. It is ruled by the moon. Saturn has its detriment in the sign of Cancer, and Jupiter is exalted in the sign of Cancer. And then Mars has its fall in the sign of Cancer, and Cancer is a nocturnal sign.
And now we have Capricorn. Um, the symbol under it is the glyph for Capricorn. Which literally before I literally never like understood it, but right now looking at it and after we talked about this, Toni, it really does look like it looks like a goat with a tail. So it looks like a sea goat. But
Like
Toni also pointed out that it looks like what?
the it looks like the word no, and that is my favorite way to remember the symbol because this is the I still don't think I know how to draw this symbol, but I'm like, okay, it's just like no in cursive. So with
Yeah.
a little bit more.
But that's so funny also because Capricorn, their symbol literally being no.
Yeah, that's a very Capricorn thing. So
Yeah.
we'll get into that more, but tell us about the building blocks, Silver.
Okay, so Capricorn is an earth sign along with Taurus and Virgo. Um, it's a cardinal sign and it is ruled by Saturn. Mars is exalted in Capricorn. The moon is in detriment in Capricorn. Jupiter falls in Capricorn, and it is also a nocturnal sign.
That's Cancer and Capricorn. So now we're gonna get into our favorite part. Just kidding, we don't have favorite parts. It's all our favorite. But we're gonna get into what these building blocks mean for us and how they make up the different signs that we're talking about. So we'll start off with Cancer, and we'll start off with the element for Cancer, which is water. And I know we talked about this in the Taurus Scorpio episode, but I think it's still good for us to kind of resurface some of those keywords for water so that way we can have that in our mind as we build up what it means to be Cancer. So, can you remind us of some of your water keywords?
For me, I felt like water always represents like emotions. It represents depth, strength. I said it is encapsulating and consuming, and it can be. And yeah, I don't know. I think water also can represent like overwhelm for me too, on like a negative word, I guess.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, I think some words I would add to that is just like, I don't know, you might have said all encompassing already, but if you didn't, that I talked about how it carries you if you surrender. It has this very like transportational, sort of element
Mhm.
to it that I definitely associate with. Life sustaining. I talked about how crucial it is to so many different forms of life. Um, and I think when you say encapsulates, I think that's such a great word because especially as I was preparing for this episode, I thought about how it can mold to the shape of you. I'm in
Mhm.
love with the shape of you. But yeah, it'll mold to the shape of whatever it's contained by. So like it really just shows how it's responsive on an elemental level. Like water on its own is shapeless. Like it has to have a container to give it shape. And so it
Right.
really shapes whatever it's contained by.
Right.
Um,
Responsive is such a good word. Mhm.
yes, yes. And then I also thought about ancestry. And I think that came from the understanding of like water as representing memories. Um,
Mhm.
and I saw something like a while ago that kind of stuck with me about water in terms of its memory, and specifically for like enslaved Africans and people who are
Yeah.
descendants of enslaved Africans, and how like so many of our ancestors are in the water, like
Yeah.
ancestors who jumped or who were thrown off board or whatever. And so the water kind of holding on to their memories and like, yeah. So
Yeah.
ancestry, I think, is important for water as well. And I think each of the water signs have their own sort of relationship to it.
Yeah, just thinking about like in different cultures, for example, like Dominicans have like so many myths around like what lives in water, like what is in the
Mhm.
water, and like I know that for Haitians that's also like a thing. So I feel like it's also like it holds like such history and like
Yeah. And also, we mentioned this before, but I think we got to mention it every time. It's so deep. Water is deep, and
Mhm.
there's a lot that we still have yet to understand and know about water. So,
Right.
and then in terms of modality, Cancer is a cardinal sign. And so for cardinality, this was something we talked about in our Aries Libra episode. Those were our first pair of cardinal signs, but we're going to resurface some of those keywords again so that way we can have it top of mind. So I'll start off with starting. That's literally what it means to be cardinal. Initiating. And I wrote in my notes that to start is to respond. I think all of the cardinal signs have a responsive nature to them. And I feel like when you start something, you're starting something in response to something that happens. So I think that's
Yeah.
important. And I think that's important for this axis in particular. So I wanted to mention it. And then I have decide and direct. And I have
Yeah,
enact.
direction.
Yeah, cardinal signs do something about things. Like they're not gonna just sit there.
Yeah. So then thinking about like cardinal water and what that would mean, I feel like that's just like leading with matters of the heart, leading with your emotions. It's like an emotional compass. Um, just like responding emotionally to what you're experiencing. I feel like that's very cardinal water.
Yeah. When I think of cardinal water, I think a lot about the tides, and I think I'll go into this more as we get into the episode, but I feel like the more I was meditating and like studying the tides, I was like, this is Cancer. Like there's just an initiatory nature, I think, to tides. Like they kind of come at you, like and come back at you. Like there's like a movement, and I think I will be able to come back to tides in relationship to Cancer later, but that's just my cardinal water
Okay.
example.
And Cancer is also ruled by the moon.
So yeah, what does the moon mean for you? Silver.
Um, Silver Moon, you mean? Just kidding. For me, I think the moon is very, representative of our emotions. It's representative of comfort and routine. I think of like home. I think of the moon being like representative of feelings you feel when you're at home. So like safety, security, nurturance, like um all of those words come to mind when I think of the moon.
Mhm.
What about for you?
I I was thinking about like the physical qualities of it and what it means for us on Earth.
Mhm.
So like as I think I mentioned before, it's the closest celestial body in the sky to us. And I was looking up like things about how like I was like, can we survive without the moon? Like, would we be okay without the moon? And like, long story short, no. Um,
Oh, really?
But yeah, so basically the function of the moon, from what I gathered, is that it makes life on Earth safer and more hospitable. So like there could be life on Earth without the moon, but it would be chaos for
Yeah.
humans especially.
Yeah.
So it's one of its like major functions. It stabilizes the Earth's tilt. Um, and so without the moon, the tilt of the earth could vary very wildly. And it's funny because I recently watched this movie, Moonfall, with my boyfriend. And at the time I wasn't even thinking about, the Cancer-Capricorn axis, but like that movie really puts into perspective, like if the moon were to ever get out of its tilt and like get out of whack, it would just be pure chaos on Earth. And so, yeah, it's not a great movie, but it was cool. And so I was thinking about this. It also controls the tides. So this is why
Mhm.
tides was also important for me for Cancer. Um, but it's one of the only celestial bodies that actually impacts the behavior of life on Earth. For example,
Mhm.
like nocturnal animals behave differently depending on where the moon is in the sky. Lions are less likely to hunt during full moon. Um, it impacts the full moon impacts our sleep schedule and like the phases of the moon. You might sleep
Mhm.
more or less depending on where the moon is in the sky. So it's like one of those things that's like I don't think there's any other. I mean, the sun does give like happy hormones, but like the moon is doing a lot in terms of like what's going on with us as a species, like our inner worlds. For
Yeah.
example, like we have holidays around the moon, like that's how a lot of major
Yeah.
holidays are figured out. So it's just interesting how much power the moon has over us.
And
Like,
also, yeah, for those of us who experience like moon cycles, menstrual cycles, like I feel like that actually, like, like our relationship to the moon is so like connected. It's
yeah.
like honestly, like it baffles me sometimes to think about it, like how literally so many of us have, like our menstrual cycles are connected to the moon in different ways, maybe,
Mhm.
but um literally like affect our bleeding, which is like
Yeah, which is
wild.
like our body, like our very bodies, like that to me, like the connections between the moon and like our experience as humans is as much evidence for astrology as you're gonna get. But
Yeah. And also
like,
just like like knowing that like, like our moon cycles are also reflective of like our ability to have children. And like once we do experience pregnancy, not having those moon cycles anymore. And like, I don't know, it's so weird. It's like, and we're like turning it into a moon. Like it's so
yeah,
cool. And I
I'm
feel like the moon is so like reflective of the divinity of like life, of like
mm,
also like producing life, reproducing life
yeah,
in general.
exactly. And then in terms of like what it symbolizes in astrology, I thought about like it's about how we take care of ourselves on the daily. It's about how we nurture our body and our emotions, how we nourish ourselves. And then I thought about all the things a baby needs because for some reason that made it easier for me to remember what I, as a human adult, need as well.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, baby needs rest, food, comforting, laughter, nurturing, routine, stimulation, and just like parenting and guidance. Like their babies are
Yeah.
very they really don't have a lot of good survival on their own.
They're really like immature,
They're
honestly.
really immature, like they're kind of a liability, but
Like
but
grow up.
but they're here, so we literally have to do everything for them. But they're also like amazing, fascinating little creatures as well. Um,
Definitely.
and
Mhm.
then so other keywords I had for the moon, mother, timekeeper, navigation, and I had procreation cycles. And so
Mhm.
yeah, the moon's goal is to ensure the embodied human experience is safe, secure, and life-sustaining. It's how we experience parenting, but it's also how we parent ourselves and then whoever comes into relation to us as a child. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just like how we nurture ourselves and also like our loved ones. Like
Exactly.
even in relationships, like friendships.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like you can parent people who aren't your children. The navigation piece for me for the moon was important because I was telling Silver when we were last talking about the moon how as a kid, I'm pretty sure someone told me or like through some form of media, I thought that in order to find your way home, you have to follow the moon. And the moon, like as long as you just keep following the moon, you'll get to your home. Which is very cute for like associations between the moon and home, right?
Really so cute, and you should pass it down for generations.
Yeah, like so I was telling Silver how I would literally be in the car and like I would just look for the moon and like watch the moon on my way home. And then I was home. So I was like, okay, it worked. Like follow the moon, we got to our home. That's how you get
Literally.
and then when I couldn't find the moon, I'd be like,
We're not getting home tonight.
but yeah, I believed that for a while. I don't think it was too long that I believed that. I obviously grew up and realized that you have to follow the GPS, but I definitely thought that. And so I was looking more into the moon, and actually, sailors do use the moon to navigate on the seas.
Mm.
So the phase that the moon is in, whatever face it's showing them, they could kind of use that to figure out what direction the sun was in because the moon is reflecting the sun's light, and then use that to get to where they want to go. So it's a very directional. The moon does have a
Yeah,
lot of
it's literally a natural compass.
yeah, like so it's very cool, very cool. What do you feel about the difference between the sun and the moon as like these two very important parts of the birth chart, but historically and even now, like people put a lot of significance on their sun sign.
I honestly think that like the moon sign is really important too, because it's like your levels of comfort. It's what brings you safety. I feel like in terms of intimacy, in terms of like actually building like or making connections and like having these bonds, I think your moon sign is really essential to understanding people that you love and understanding yourself. So I feel like yeah, you can see someone's like sun sign like maybe like by hanging out with them, but like on a deeper level, I think that there's like a whole um like I feel like the deeper you get, the more you really know someone. And I feel like the more you know someone, the more you see their moon sign and you
Mhm.
can like understand like themselves in this like safe space.
Yeah, feeling at home. I feel like that's so key. Like I feel like when you really get to know someone, then you're like, oh, that's why your moon. And some depending on where your moon is in your chart, that might be super visible, right? Like if you have a 10th house moon, like that might be the first thing kind of
Yeah.
people are seeing about you. But not everybody has the moon so prominent in their chart, so it might take a little bit more of like you said,
Mhm.
intimacy, more shared experiences to really know, like, oh, like this is your moon sign. Like, and
Yeah.
I think it's a special thing. And the moon changes signs the fastest out of all of the celestial bodies. It goes from one sign to another over the span of like 2 days or so.
Yeah.
So it's much more personal to you than your sun, which stays
Mhm.
in the same sign for like a month.
Yeah.
As Silver was saying, the sun is much more prominent in like pop astrology. And traditionally, like throughout history, that hasn't always been the case. But I think as patriarchy has continued to kind of encroach upon our society, I mean, it's here. It's been here for a while now, but it's always upping it. It's always stepping it up, um, and the more
Insidious.
patriarchy has stepped it up, the more I think there has been focus on the sun, specifically because the things that the sun represent are much more masculine in terms of characteristics. It's about like awareness, purpose, and not to say like these,
Ego, consciousness.
yeah, like the thing, like it's like, and all of us have it in us, like this feeling of like, oh, this is why I'm here. I'm here to do these things, and it's like feeling empowered, and some might say having the audacity, which men always have. Um, and so those words tend to be associated with masculinity. And so with the sun kind of becoming the most prominent thing in everyone's chart, you can see how it's like, oh, let's prioritize the celestial body that aligns with, patriarchy. And then the moon is a lot of the characteristics for the moon are much more feminine, such as, nurturing, caretaking, mothering, parenting in general, child rearing. And like the moon is more of a responsive sort of being in the sky. Like it reflects the light of the sun. It's not the source of light, right? It doesn't have any light on its own. So it's like this idea that like the feminine only exists because of the masculine. Like so long story short, the reason why, the moon is not as prioritized, and honestly, none of the planets are as prioritized as the sun in astrology these days, has to do with patriarchy.
I
But
also feel like, well, like while you were talking about that, like understanding the moon as like this as like what makes you feel comfortable and safe, and what makes you feel like nurtured, and also understanding the sun is like this, like the ego and like the your identity within this world, like even within a capitalist society, like, or system, like the idea of like that not being valued as much within like our culture. Your like safety, your comfort, your like just like self-care being valued as much as like your like identity like within the
mm,
world, and like all of that stuff. So there's all like capitalism, patriarchy.
yes, hand in hand, white supremacy. Whenever I say one, I mean all of them. I just need to add a little asterisk and its associates. Um,
And associate.
and so, yeah, but over time, I think astrology is starting to, become more of this complex sort of network of celestial bodies. And so I feel like people are thinking more about how these, or at least us, me and Silver, are thinking about how these how these celestial bodies are speaking to one another and informing each other. So I want to bring up a quote from Chani Nicholas from her book, You Were Born for This. Highly recommend, really enjoyed it. But when talking about the moon, and this is kind of in relation to the sun, she has a really good quote that I think is a good sort of precursor to my little mini, not poem, just my little mini writing thing that I had about the sun and the moon. So she says the moon reflects our life's purpose. It tells us how we live that purpose in the physical realm. It speaks to our daily experience of manifesting our spiritual selves, and it is a reflection of the soul's experience in the body. I mean, that's so beautifully said. I don't really need to say anything else. But I was kind of going along this same route, thinking about the sun and the moon and how the moon receives the sunlight, the sun's light and reflects it, and how the sun and the moon feed each other information so that the moon, in its reception of the sun's light and its proximity to humans, it can store solar insights such as like our purpose, our awareness, our light into the body. So it's storing the stuff received from the divine, right? If you think about the sun as like this divine purpose, it's storing information from the divine in the body and bringing the body closer to the divine and the divine closer to the body. And so basically like just thinking about the body as a channel and as divinity in and of itself. I mean, we've talked about this in the Taurus Scorpio episode where like the body is kind of seen as just this like it's just not seen as most important. Like, obviously, we live in a very body conscious society, but the actual honoring of the body, we don't honor our bodies. We judge our bodies.
We
We
like malnourish, we treat them like we treat it poorly, we don't prioritize it.
we
Like
don't care for it. Yeah, like it's like, and it's weird because it's like so relevant. It's like one of the first things that we see about each other, and we're making judgments based off those. But there is no real like honoring of like all that the body is and that the body like just having gratitude for one's body. And so this practice of like just writing about the sun and the moon helped me to think about how like oh like my physical presence is also divine, like this is actually a miracle that this is all happening and I'm here.
yeah. I mean, like what you just said, like the moon acting as like this like conduit of like divinity. I
Oh,
feel
that
like
was
is
beautiful.
literally also us. Like, hello, human beings. Like the way that we can literally create life, it like we are also a conduit of like divinity. And I feel
Oh,
like us and like, like just connecting us back to the moon in that way. It's really cool. Um, and yeah, like even like what you were saying about like how the moon kind of like translates the information. I feel like that's also really prevalent in the way that it shows up in our charts, right? Like while like I'm a Sagittarius, like, the best way to get to me, the best way to get me to like get like to understand things is a very like Taurus way, through comfort and security, through like trust and loyalty, like all of those
right.
things. Like so I feel like that's so like everything is connected.
Literally, the reflective nature of it, like that's very much it. Like your sun sign might say like who you are in this world, your identity type of thing, but like the moon sign is like how do you live that identity on a daily
Yeah.
basis, like the lived experience. And so
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard an interpretation of the moon sign being like your inner child. The way that we talk about
yeah,
it
you're
is
kind of like
essentially like
holding it like a
it's
baby.
like the little us inside. Like
Yes, yes, little Silver and little Toni. That's so cute. Yeah, we love the moon here. So
we
yeah,
respect the moon in this house.
period. Jupiter exalting in the sign of Cancer. Do we want to say anything about that?
I've never met a Cancer Jupiter. Never like seen
Yeah,
that manifested.
I feel like with some of the like for planets, the outer planet, they're not the outer planets, but the generational planets, so to speak, that have like exaltation in a certain sign, it's hard for me to imagine just because most of the people we know are obviously our generation. So
Yeah.
like when like I don't know what generation Jupiter and Cancer is, but I don't know that I have met them or I don't know that they were that when I met them. So
Yeah.
but I do think that it makes me just think about the familial sort of bonds that Cancer cares about, which like family could be biological, but to me, I'm like family just is whoever's for you. And I feel like Jupiter, like it's generous and it wants to be able to give everything to everyone around. Like it's like it's for the group, the crew. Like it's not just for one person. It wants
Yeah.
it's not a selfish sort of abundance. It's abundance
Yeah.
like we can all get some of this.
Definitely. Like I feel like the way in which Jupiter loves or like expresses love is so like would of course be the most comfortable in Cancer because
Mhm.
like Jupiter like while yeah they are super generous with like mostly everyone, I feel like when it comes to their people, the people that they love, um it's a different level. And I feel like of
Mhm.
course for Cancer being family, like yeah,
Yeah.
I could see that making sense. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So bringing those things together based off of like water and cardinality and the moon, Cancer phrases I thought about was just like initiating care and comfort or like the emotional responsiveness to care for and comfort others. Cancer knows that home is a feeling and it has the emotional decisiveness to establish and nurture a sense of home through like connecting with others. Everyone keep that in mind. We're going to move to Capricorn now and the building blocks of that, but we will obviously bounce back and forth and get into all of them. So Capricorn, we've moved from water to earth, our lovable earth sign. So we talked about this in Taurus and Scorpio, but again, let's resurface. What does earth mean for us? Start us off, Silver.
Earth for me represents a lot of the like the human experience, the earthly realm, the stuff that is important for our survival on this planet. Um, or, you know, like the routine of being a human. When I think of the earth signs in general, I think that they all represent the importance and the value of the human experience. Like while we're here, like let's make the most of it, or like let's make the best of it in their own ways. So I remember you mentioning in the Taurus episode parallels between the way we treat our own bodies and the way we treat like the planet Earth itself, and the lack of care that we treat the Earth with. And I feel like for Earth signs, that they always seem like they're good. They're like fine, like they're good. And I feel like that can kind of translate in similar ways, like the way that we view the earth as kind of like untouchable, like indestructible, like it'll be fine. It's self-sufficient, like, you know, and I feel like that's a similar way that we kind of can view earth signs sometimes because we don't understand the delicacy the of them, I guess, as well.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is people be taking us for granted. Um, and I think that's very much, especially with this conversation on Capricorns, I think people take Capricorns for granted a lot. And so, but I think all the earth signs can be taken for granted in different ways because of the perceived sort of structure and stability. And so people can just assume like, oh, they know how to do it, they can handle it, it'll be fine.
Mhm.
I also thought about, let me see. Oh, one thing you said in our Taurus Scorpio episode that I liked was like the practical experience of being human, which I thought was like so key. Like, yeah, it's like
Mhm.
what do you have to do to be a human? Like,
Like,
human,
what do we
how to
have to do
be a
to
human.
survive here?
Right, exactly. And so, and the emotional realm is a part of that, but I think for earth signs, as I said before, like the material realm is a little bit more prioritized. But we can muddy that a little bit in our discussion. Um, and another thing I thought about was like the resourcefulness of earth signs. All the earth signs I think are very resourceful. The Capricorn in particular, I think that they might take the resourceful championship out of all of us.
What you just said kind of like made me think of this, but like, you know, like giving what we have defined like as the cardinal energy, or what we have like mentioned about the cardinal energy, and it being like the initiators as starters. I feel like cardinal earth is like so resourceful, definitely. And I feel like Capricorn specifically, like I feel like that is like using what this earth has to offer to achieve all that you can. Also, given that it's like the last earth sign of the astrological year, I feel like they're like, we will achieve that. Like they're like
It's our only chance,
they're like,
okay?
we are going to do this because we're the last to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I think of like cardinal earth, I think of like man-made innovation.
Hmm.
Like the stuff that like we have on this planet that I mean like that we have the privilege of like experiencing, but like that was literally like someone was like the cardinal sign, or like the
Hmm.
initiators of that, and they used what we have, like the resources that we have on this earth, to like create. It's like
Create
not
more resources. Wait a second.
exactly, which
That's
is literally so Capricorn.
that is like using resources to create resources that will be used forever. Like
Mm-hmm.
best inventions kind of thing. Which I wonder if that's Aquarius or Capricorn, we'll see. But let's
I don't know
not
why I love Capricorns all of a sudden.
I was gonna say let's not make their egos too inflated, but they are pretty freaking
LOL.
amazing. Yeah, that's cardinal Earth. If it wasn't enough for them to be cardinal Earth signs, they're also ruled by
They're also
Saturn. Wow.
they're also ruled by Saturn. What? I feel like that is so like that's why like you can't not be this powerful person as like a cardinal Earth ruled by Saturn. Like what? Come on.
Get out of here. It's over.
Stop
Hang it
playing with
up.
me.
Hang it up. Everybody else needs to just stop trying at this point. Um, but let's talk about Saturn. Um,
Yeah, I feel like Saturn, the like planet of Saturn, obviously like adds layers of discipline, of boundaries, like of duty. It adds like that layer of like provider. Um Cardinal, of course, because they're the initiator, they're gonna be like the start, right? But like being ruled by Saturn actually gives you that endurance to keep that momentum of your cardinality, like which is
yeah,
so powerful. I can't.
very powerful. So I took it back to the physical qualities again because I just think that, I mean, we've been doing that throughout the axes, but it's really cool to look at like the planets themselves from like their behavior and like their physical makeup and
Yeah.
tie it back to the meaning. So Saturn is the slowest moving planet that is visible to from the planet Earth, right? So Saturn is also the farthest visible planet from Earth. So I'm not saying it's the farthest planet from Earth. It's just the farthest planet that's visible to the naked eye. So for a long time, astrologers did not know anything beyond Saturn, which is why it has its meaning around limits and boundaries, because that was the limit of what astronomers and astrologers knew existed within the solar system. Then they discovered Uranus and it was like, what? There's more. Um, but so for a long time, Saturn was the limit, right? And I think limits are super important for Saturnian
Mm-hmm.
boundaries, like you said. Um, Another thing I have is that it has the most moons in our entire solar system. I know we
Mm-hmm.
brought up moons for Jupiter, and Silver was like, yeah,
Don't they have like 92 or something?
it's
What?
83.
83.
Yeah, Saturn has hella moons, which I think is so cute because that opposition with Capricorn and Cancer being the moon ruled sign and
Mm-hmm.
Saturn having the most moons, that's so cute. Um, and then another thing I thought about just in terms of like what it represents, it's like the bigger picture, not in the same way as Jupiter, bigger picture, more so like the longer picture, I guess,
Yeah,
for Saturn. It's like it's father time, like that's Saturn's thing.
literally.
And I started like looking into quotes about time because I was like, wow, time is just if you think about time too much, it's a trippy experience. But
Yeah.
anyway, Saturn is trippy as fuck, by the way. But I saw this quote that was like time devours all. And it's like it's a longer quote and it's in Latin, but English, it's time devours all.
Mhm.
And it just talks about like just the inevitability of time and like, you know, nothing lasts forever, kind of. And I think
Yeah.
Saturn knows that the embodied experience can only last for so long. So you have to have something that's gonna last beyond the embodied experience, like after
Yeah.
you're gone. Um, Saturn has a lot of representations, many of which we're probably still have yet to learn because we haven't had our Saturn return yet. And even people who have had their Saturn return, they're probably still learning about Saturn.
On top of that, I feel like also when I read about it, I was reading about like the rings, how it has
Mhm.
7 rings, and how their rings are made of chunks of ice and rock. If
Yeah.
that's not so Capricorn, I don't know what is. Like,
It represents old people. I think I was raised by my grandparents, so I have a special connection to old people. I love old. But I think that I would describe like a lot of the values that I have, the things that, the way that I was parented is like pretty Saturnian in the sense of like just approaching things from like a much more longer perspective or just understanding that like time has such a huge impact on life and
yeah.
the wisdom that comes with time. Like I'm not saying I have all the wisdom yet, but I feel like I was just because I was raised by people that, were old. It was
You
just like,
got to like receive a lot of their wisdom
yeah, a lot of
and
their
their
wisdom, a lot
experience.
of their approach to life is just like it's just different than, a younger person's
Yeah,
approach
I
to
feel like thinking about that also like Capricorn following Sagittarius, which is this like really big picture like planet. And then also thinking about the stage of life, I believe Sagittarius is like retirement age, makes
life.
sense. And then I feel like Capricorn is kind of nearing the like, like they're kind of I think like 70s, that
Mm-hmm.
age range. So that's like when you start to like understand your life
Mm-hmm.
span and
Mm-hmm.
like you're starting to understand your mortality a little bit more, I'm sure, as well. It's also like understanding the importance of your time here because like you almost done with your lifespan. So understanding like to value the human experience in that way, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
um
Some other significations I'll just throw in there. It's about restraint, constraint, slow, gradual growth. And I think that's like why Silver was bringing up the thing about Capricorn. Like they're a cardinal sign, but unlike Aries, and I think unlike Libra and Cancer too, like I feel like Saturn gives it this like commitment to see something through. Capricorns are not going to leave it unfinished.
exactly.
And I think Saturn, that's because of Saturn. Like Saturn is it wants to see the growth, but it's just not going to be instant gratification. It's delayed.
Mhm.
My phrase for Saturn and for a lot of things is like delayed but not denied, but sometimes denied.
That's literally, yeah, delayed gratification. And that's where I feel like that growth from the Sagittarius experience comes in. Is Sagittarius is very instant gratification. It's
Mm-hmm.
very like I want to live my life right now because like I don't know when like how long it's going to last. But Capricorn is like you don't know, but like the more effort and time you put into it, the better the outcome. And you want to have like that. I don't know. I feel like they really like to maximize past the point of potential, right? That's what
Yeah, I mean,
Sagittarius is.
I think
So
they like care about legacy. Like Saturn,
yeah,
Saturn's like, yeah, we're not going to be here the whole time, but how about we build something that can be passed on to be here
that
for
can
the
last.
next time, right? Like what, like in a way, I feel like that's kind of the limitlessness of like Saturn is about limits, but I think in the way that Saturn operates, it can be about like pushing yourself to think beyond just yourself, like,
No,
beyond
yeah.
your life right now, what's going to happen after. What you'll read about Saturn, like if you were to go explore it, like it's easy to just get sort of just scared of it. I mean, it's a malefic, so it's not fun things. It's not it's not a great time like Jupiter, unfortunately. It's very much about like lessons and like the delayed
What's
gratification.
necessary? It's what you
Right.
need, but you don't want.
Exactly. And one of my quotes I had is like, yeah, you could do anything, but should you? Like Saturn is very much that should you?
Yeah.
It's asking you the questions to make sure, and it's one of those things that it pays off in the end, right? So it's like um it's gonna give you it can give you really great blessings and really I think just wisdom that can make life feel a lot more like, oh, like it's actually not if you just like face it, if you face the Saturnian things, which can be like fear, grief, anything you're afraid of, like that's probably Saturn.
Yeah.
And mastery. Saturn, I think that's important for Capricorns, especially. Mastery is Saturn's gift. Most Capricorns that I know are masters at whatever they're doing. Mars's exaltation in Capricorn is pretty awesome. Just because I feel like it's interesting because the Capricorn environment is conducive to both malefics. So like Saturn in Capricorn is at home and Mars in Capricorn is exalted. And I just feel like when you can wield the energy of the malefics in such a way, like it just gives you that added oomph. And remember when I was talking about Scorpio versus Aries and
Yeah.
like I'm sorry, Capricorn's gonna eat
Capricorn got them
everybody.
all.
Capricorns beat everybody's ass, and we just we just hear
And
like
literally in such a strategic, intelligent way. Mars in Capricorn is such a disciplined like place. Like it's the discipline of Capricorn being brought to this like your drive. Of course it would be exalted there. Of course, the more like work you put into it, the more discipline that you have with it. The more it would like flourish. I don't know. And Capricorn Mars, that's hot. Like like
okay,
it's also like the level of like intensity of Capricorn and like just like they're
like
not fucking around and there's
you're
something
not.
hot about that.
Yeah, yeah. So Mars and Capricorn, very powerful placement right there. So yeah, those are the different things that make up Capricorn. So now that we've gotten into the building blocks of both Cancer and Capricorn, I think we'll go back to Cancer and just talk a little bit more about like just more key phrases for Cancer and understandings of Cancer so we can really feel like we know Cancer as much as we can for now.
Yeah. Yeah, some words that I thought of with Cancer was of course nurture. I thought of vulnerability. But I also thought of like protection,
Mhm.
um, loyalty, and I wanted to say like my initial instinct was for some reason to say love, but like I think more of the word I mean is like it's care, like
Mhm.
but the way in which they love is so fucking beautiful. So that's why that was like the way that I thought. I mean the first word that I thought of, but I think care is a great word for Cancer. I think of course of like family of depth. I think they're creative.
Yeah, I thought about the emotional presence and responsiveness and
Mm-hmm.
labor that
Mm-hmm.
cancers do. Emotional labor, I think, is a thing for them. I mean, for many people, but Cancer archetype is taking on that emotional labor. Maybe they could, unburden themselves at certain points, but I do think that naturally that is what they will do. Like they'll do the emotional labor of
Yeah, I think that like for a lot of the time it's not always like I don't think that it's consensual. Like I don't think that they always want to do it. And I have a lot of Cancer placements in my life, a lot in my family too. And I feel like they often talk about the fact that like people like will literally like that they don't know well will just like come up to them and feel like they can just open up, and a lot of the time they are like, whoa, like I don't know what to do with this information. Like you just feel safe, I feel like around a Cancer placement. Often you feel
At
safe enough to
home.
confide in them. Yeah, you might feel home.
Yeah, I thought about the in our Taurus Scorpio episode when you were talking about water, you were like, you can go to the ocean and release your emotions. Cancer like,
Yeah.
why you just release all that shit on me? And because they
Oh,
are emotionally responsive, like they kind of, it's like once you pull them in, like it's, I think it can be hard and it's something they have to work on to be like, okay, this is not something that I'm going to emotionally process with or for or in support of you always, because sometimes you might not be
yeah.
able to.
I
Um,
think that a like a big part of that may be like the way that we talked about how like in tune with their emotions they are. I feel like in a way that a lot of people don't, they like immediately understand their emotions and they like kind of react emotionally. Like we said this, they respond emotionally. So I think that like seeing someone so in tune with their emotions kind of like brings that out of you, like you
mhm,
feel like, oh, like I can do that, or like for some reason you feel safe to do it with them because you know that they have this like capability, and you like, I
mhm.
don't know, I think it kind of inspires people to want to like
Yeah, to get into
be
their
there with
feelings
you.
too.
Yeah.
Like the element of water. When you have like, let's say you have like a drop of water in one place or a drop of water in another place, they gravitationally pull to each other. If you bring them close, they just
Mm-hmm.
come together.
Yeah.
So, like how water might just bring out the water in other people. It's like the water
Yeah.
in you pulled out the
Yeah.
water in me.
That's so true. There's like this gravity towards
Yeah.
them. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For
That's so
sure.
cute.
I thought about also how, like, not only Cancer as mother or nurturer, but Cancer is carrying us from one phase to the next phase, like carrying you through your upbringing, kind of, which is what it means to parent, right? But the reason why I thought about phases is just because, like, the phases of the moon and how the moon is always like, the moon is constantly going through the zodiac, constantly learning the lessons of each sign in the zodiac. So, Cancer similarly is constantly learning these lessons of like emotionally, what does it mean to be in Capricorn? What does it mean to be in Aquarius? What does it mean to be like there? So it's a roller coaster for them for sure.
Yeah.
But in doing so, I thought about how like they're very equipped to be able to be like, okay, like in responding to the needs of whoever they're working with, like they can help you as you transition, kind of like
Yeah.
they're not gonna when it comes to parenting, you can't just have a one size fits all for every single situation because the child is developing, right? And you have to be attuned to their different needs. Like, oh, now they need this, now they need that. Like, and so I think Cancer is very much that energy of like being able to just kind of meet you where you're at, basically.
Like, at their best, I guess, at their most evolved version, it's also very like unjudgmental process. Like
Mm-hmm.
they will not like judge you for like feeling how you feel or like
Mm-hmm.
for being where you're at.
Exactly. Because like I feel like they've been there. Like I feel like they're always there.
Yeah.
Like they've been,
Yeah.
it's just this constant sort of emotional roller coaster that they are on.
Yeah.
Um, and
Oh.
then I also thought about home, like we've already mentioned, but I thought about remembering who we are and where we come from. I think Cancer in relationship to like fertility, it has relationships to the womb. And I think that's like where you come from, kind of. So it's like Cancer is like, I think most cancers that I know, family is really important. Whoever they've identified as family is super important to them. And knowing that they have their family, that they come from something is like helps them to feel just a part of society. Like it's important to have pride in who you are. And I think I've met a lot of very like prideful cancers too, like where it's like, don't come for them, for their family.
Yeah.
Like
Oh no. See, people like often assume that they're gonna be like little crybabies or like they're gonna be like really emotional in that sense, but I don't think that that always necessarily um manifests with them. I think that a lot of the times they can be just like, because they have been so in tune with their emotions. I think that they can also like kind of get stuck in processing like some of their emotions. I think that that also comes into the memory aspect of Cancer, the nostalgia, and I think that that can also be like in anger or in like, you know, like the darker emotions or the ones that we're not so proud to experience. So like I've met Cancers that are really bitchy, like really mean, and like you don't expect that all the time when you like get that, but there's like I feel like they're prickly. They're like of course they have like when you think of the symbol of Cancer as them being the crab, like they're really soft inside. And I do think that. I think at the end of the day they're all softies. But like I do think some of them will kind of like show up with their soft, like the softness, right? But then a lot of them, if they have like experienced stuff in the past, will not always be as willing to show that like softness, or and it takes a long time for them to be able to like really show that. And I don't like, even I know some Cancers that literally like I still don't think of them as soft, like, you know, and like, I don't know, like, I feel like it's like a long process for them. That's the thing, they get stuck on things.
I think they can get stuck in the past for sure. I think what you did to them, they're not gonna forget.
And it's also like, I feel like when we make memories, like a lot of the time associating them with how we felt will
Mm-hmm.
help us remember them. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that Cancers, because they're so in tune with their emotions, they really um, like they really hold on to how they felt. And they're like, I can't feel that way ever again. I can't like, so they can kind of hinder themselves from
Mm.
really experiencing as much as they can, I guess.
Yeah, cancers are moody. That's the thing. The
They're
moon is
so moody.
always changing. So like you can really get like depending on where the moon is, especially for Cancer risings, like honestly, just look where the moon is and that's who you're gonna get that day, maybe. Or like because like I said, the moon is moving through the zodiac so quickly, and constantly. Like it's just like it's a lot to kind of, I think when you're ruled by a planet, I mean, yeah, like a celestial body that's like going through all of these like different environments, it's kind of like I can see why you just might
Yeah.
not be in the mood. It's just like, listen.
You're gonna show up in a bunch of different ways. And I think of like of cardinal signs, I do think that they evolve a lot.
Hmm.
Like just like in different stages of their lives. Like they're always like different, I feel like.
They are always different. I think that's definitely because of the moon. Another sort of
Mhm.
um analogy that I realized is like crabs. I didn't realize that crabs always like once a year they
Get a
literally
new
come,
shell.
yeah, they get a new shell. They do the molting process where they, and I looked at a video of it because I was like, what the fuck? Um, so they literally like form a shell underneath their old shell. And then after a while, they break out of their old shell and then they have a new shell. And their new shell is very like soft during this process and it hardens and then they're, you know, new bitch. And but this whole process happens all like they do it very privately because they're very vulnerable
Mm,
during that period of their life when they're coming out of their old shell and into their new shell. But I
yeah.
was like, wow, Cancer's like, yeah, they do evolve. And I want to bring back the tides because I had talked about how
Yeah.
Cancers are tides, right? Um, so one is interesting because tides are literally like they happen at the point where the ocean meets the land. It's kind of at the limit of the ocean, which is interesting. If you want to bring in like Saturn representation
Yeah.
boundaries, but they are really important for life, both in the ocean and life on land. And I came across this theory that like the what might have aided in the evolution of like humans and any life that came from the sea, right? Because we were once in the sea and then we evolved to be on land. The tides played a huge role in that in terms of like moving species from the sea to land. So literally aiding in our evolutionary adaptation. And so when
Mhm.
you talk about cancers evolving and like all of the just the different synchronicities, like they get a new shell every year. The moon is always going into a new sign. It might have literally, the tides may have helped us to evolve as humans and as different animals that are, and different land animals. It's all suggesting that for cancers, they are becoming. They're always kind of becoming something new.
It's a very transformative like sign.
Emotions also evolve you. Emotions transform you. Emotional experiences, when you're in the emotional realm that much, it's like they're going to make an impact on you and they're going to bring you to another phase of your, like that's what it means to grow up, kind of like revisiting emotions but developing new responses to those emotions. And like it's very yeah, the emotional intelligence, I think, of Cancer, not to say that I don't know if it's always used for good, but like there is such a level of emotional attunement that I think is pretty amazing to witness. And I asked my Cancer bestie to give me some words that described her, or that she feels. I was like, what does it mean for you to be a Cancer? And she was like, oh my God, I love that question. And it was beautiful because she literally wrote a whole like note about it. She shared the note with me. And it was, when I tell you, it was so, I mean, she's also an artist, but like it was so like poetic and like just reflective.
Okay, can we like take a second, because cancers are so poetic, like, and I think that has to do with the attunement to your emotions and such, but like when it comes to writing, I think that cancers are very, very talented in that realm, and like Cancer Mercuries can
I
be
feel
so
like,
poetic about the way that they like communicate. It's so
yeah,
beautiful.
I think that like they coming after Gemini, the communication aspect comes really well. And it's not, I don't know if it's always verbal. I think it can be verbal, but I think anything where they have sort of any way of communicating that allows their emotions to shine through, it's going to be brought to life in such a beautiful
Yeah.
like way. So in this case, it was writing, and I'm not going to read the like entire quote, but like the things that she touched on was like having emotional depth and intelligence, being there for and catering to others. She also talked about feeling emotionally responsible, like it's your duty. She literally used the words duty, which I think was really interesting for thinking about how cancers often take on emotional labor that, maybe they didn't necessarily have to, but they feel like they have to. Like they feel like they do. She said trusting your emotional instinct and pouring into oneself first. But she mentioned that was something she's learning more, that you can't like try to pour into other people before you pour into your own. She said, we give a fuck and don't at the same damn time, which I was like, that's so funny, given the moon is always like, you might catch them on a day where they're being all nice and cuddly. The next day, you might be, it might be another person.
No, but that's, I feel like, so important for like the archetype of Cancer in general, because like people always will say that they give such a fuck and like that they care so much, but at the same time I think that that is a conscious decision that they make, and I think that the second that they decide otherwise, second that they've reached the limit or whatever, like they can flip that off so easy, it's scary. Like so I feel like that is so like accurate. Like it really depends on who you are. Like cancers aren't just gonna care about you just because they're a Cancer. I feel like it really matters. Like if it's like a random dude, like okay, let's
Yeah.
say
Yeah, that's Cancer versus Pisces too, because I think Pisces probably does care about like any random person, but I think Cancers do have boundaries in the sense that like when they decide to care, they care, but you have to get into their clan. They're very clannish, they're territorial, like crabs themselves are territorial and Cancers are too. And it's like you have to kind of get into their inner circle, and
yeah.
then you get all of the care, and then you get to see their softer side and you get the protection and all that kind of stuff.
But
But at
that
the
is
same
a
time,
beautiful, beautiful place to be.
it's a beautiful place to be, but if you're not there, it's a scary place to be because then you are their opposition. And if you
Yeah.
so
That's I think that cancers can be so, because they're so emotionally attuned, like they can be so scary if they want to be. For like cultural references, I literally said love in the show You. And I feel like she is so like she's a Cancer, right? But like obviously that's a dark side of a Cancer. That bitch is crazy. Like, but like she's also like so like she loves him so much that she can rationalize anything that she's doing. But obviously there's like this dark side to them that they can also like I think a lot of the time it can be related to the people that you do love and the people that you do want to protect. But at the same time, if it's between like me or you and you are like fighting for yourself, then like cancers can be deadly. Like I think that they can be so powerful in a way that like the ocean can be. Like the ocean can be a beautiful, beautiful thing, but it can also be terrifying and like overwhelming and like strong as fuck. It could literally take you out. Like, so I think cancers have that in them. I think people underestimate that. I feel like for a long time, I had such this like idea of cancers as being like really like kind and like I think they're like don't get me wrong, like I have my beef with cancers, you know this. But like I've always seen them as like so kind and like when they do love you, like they love you. However, the older I'm getting, I'm meeting different cancers and I literally like I think that within the last few years I've met some like aggressive cancers. Like some people that are like genuinely like scary. Like they're like just even just like in their interactions with people they don't know well. And it like like shocked me when they like when I like asked them their sign and they were like a Cancer, but like I just wouldn't put it past them. And I think that it has a lot to do with your upbringing for cancers. I think it matters like the family you grew up in and like your experiences for sure.
I wonder if like for Cancer placements, upbringing has even more importance just because that's so foundational to
Yeah.
Cancer as an archetype. Because yeah, like I feel like for all of the water signs, I think water can just be a very misunderstood element, because we don't really live in a very emotionally intelligent society. So I feel like if you are nurtured in a like people who don't know how to process their emotions, if they have this emotional ass baby, like they will kind of like they might raise them in a way that tries to like gaslight the baby, maybe not even purposefully, but just telling the baby that like feelings are not that important when like to the baby, feelings are everything. Those early experiences, early childhood experiences, I think are very important for them. So how they're taught to sort of process and deal with emotions, like will stick and they can replicate that. And then it's like, I don't know. I just feel like having an emotionally unaware Cancer or any emotionally unaware water sign is scary because it's like
Yeah.
you are an emotional sort of like you could be a bomb sort of just waiting to happen.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily understand the impact and just I just feel like water signs have to be handled and nurtured with care because it's like we are not living in a society where water is very respected in general.
You know, just like even talking about this, like I feel like when we were talking about Scorpio and how they're seen as like this like really you know like capable strong like sign, but you were like they're literally just teddy bears, they just want like love. Like um I remember seeing something a long time ago that said like that Scorpios were cancers in leather jackets.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is so like telling for both of the signs, but I feel like just like also understanding the darkness that can come with Cancer, the power that can come with being a water sign, and just like how you know like obviously like being that emotionally intelligent can be used like amazingly but also can be weaponized. And I think that that is like a definitely a shadow aspect for Cancer is like maybe like emotional manipulation or
Mhm.
like ways in which they like can weaponize their amazing like emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
For positive expressions, uh I think that like an evolved Cancer teaches us like that it's possible to love and be sensitive and be vulnerable and also be protective of
Mm.
ourselves and of like the people like that we love and stuff. I feel like that's like a beautiful thing that I've learned from Cancers.
Life is already an emotional roller coaster. And Cancers just get on the ride. Like they just always they're always gonna get on the ride. And I think they're not
That
afraid.
way.
Yeah, they're not afraid to get on the ride. They realize that the ride is important, even if they've been on the ride before. Like it's just you can't stop it. So you might as well get on it. Like and ride the
Yeah.
wave. Like I feel like Cancers ride the wave of whatever they're feeling. And yeah, I think that can be, a positive or a negative, but I think ultimately because you can't stop emotions, I can never really say an emotion is negative. It's more so like how do you deal with it?
Yeah. I think Cancer has this understanding of the fact that we're all so different, but the way that they love is so beautiful because it's so unique to you. And
Mm-hmm.
they and I feel like that's why it feels so deep and profound to be loved by a Cancer
Yeah.
because it's like you know that they're putting in the time and effort of like knowing you as a person
Mm-hmm.
to like show up for you in the way that you need. And that's like I feel like that's the thing that a lot of adults have to learn. And I feel like for Cancer, that's like intrinsic. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Like their ability to respond to people based on what they need. And like
Yeah.
with water, when we were talking about how it's encapsulating, like it will take the shape of whatever you are, whatever you need,
Yeah.
take that shape and be able to meet you there. And I think that that also brings me to another point about Cancer intuition. Cancer intuition, not to pit signs against each other, but because I feel like all water signs, I mean, all signs have intuition some level. Water signs, I think, have a lot of intuition. But the thing that differentiates Cancer intuition from like Pisces and Scorpio, in my opinion, is the responsiveness and like the activeness. Like I feel like a Cancer, like the same way that a mother sort of in those first like months develops like the bond with their child where like they're literally like chemically like magically connected, like they're
Mm-hmm.
in sync.
Yeah.
If you have that mothering experience, like if your mother was there at that time, right? Like that's how ideally it's supposed to go. And I feel like Cancers can have this very instinctual sort of intuition with someone where it's like they just ask you, like they can kind of meet your need before you know it's a need. Like they like will show up in the moments and it's like, oh wow, like I actually like really needed this statement. I really needed like you to be there for me and you were just there. Like it's
Yeah.
kind of wild how in tuned they can be to the needs of the people that they love. And I feel like in that sense, they kind of there's just an action behind their intuition, I think. Like and I don't even know if they're always aware of it, but I think that they can just feel called to be there for people
Yeah.
and like show up in a way that a person needs. And I don't know if Scorpio and Pisces, like I think they have the intuition, but I don't know if they always are acting on it where it's like, oh, let me come,
Yeah.
this thing for you that you didn't even realize you needed.
Yeah. I think that for a lot of people, intuition is something that needs to be like built on
Mhm.
and like trusted. You know, like you need to like learn to trust yourself and your gut and stuff. And I think that for Cancer, that like comes really naturally for
Mhm.
them. It's
Yes.
not something that needs to be like as developed as it may for other signs, which is really cool.
So yeah, I feel like that's a good amount for Cancer for now.
Cancer.
We love our Cancers. Moving on to Capricorn, a much less cuddly sign, but we love them nonetheless.
Yeah. So
Cap-
what does Capricorn like represent for you?
um, so I don't know, Capricorn, I just had all of these little life statements that I feel like made sense. And I'm like, I don't know if that's the Saturn part of like, this is the lesson of life. But for Capricorns, I think about like you reap what you sow. I think about the saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. I thought about oh yeah, like all wines get better with time. All of these statements to me represent the endurance and the hard work and the independence and the time and dedication that
Mhm.
Capricorns tend to have. They are constantly, like we said before, like just building structures that can withstand the test of time. And committing themselves to mastery, honestly, and committing themselves to material longevity.
Yeah.
Um, they are focused on things that are built to last.
Yeah, I think for Capricorn, I think like obviously like practicality, words we talked about discipline. I think that attached to the word discipline, I think of intention. I think Capricorns are very intentional. In order to be disciplined, you have to be so intentional about your time and about what it is that you know, like how it is you spend your time. And I feel like Saturn really adds that level of intention, and like given everything we were talking about with Saturn, you know, like the master of time, father of time, Saturn in general, I feel like when you are conscious of the importance of time, the value of time, there comes such an intentionality behind everything that you do. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like Capricorn really like embodies that um within like their everyday life. When I think of like intentionality, I kind of like automatically attach that to emotion and like a sentimentality as well. Like, and I feel like while Capricorn is not, I'm not going to say is an emotional, sentimental sign, I do think that because they understand the value of time, like it takes a while for them to feel they want to, you know, give that to anyone or anything or
Mm.
spend that on anything. But I feel like when they do, it's so much more sentimental. It means so much more when it feels like something is like intentional. And I think Capricorns have that like layer of, I don't know, like sentimentality to them because of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely get it. I feel like Capricorns are actually another squishy little baby. Um, but another thing I was thinking about with Capricorn, especially in terms of how it differentiates from Taurus, is that resourceful word that we used. So earth signs are typically associated with resources. And thus there's a resourcefulness that comes along with each of the earth signs. For Taurus, I feel like there is this idea of being well resourced, like having many resources. That's important for Taurus. And I think being Venus's domicile, like it's a generative space, so it can get a lot of stuff, right? And it can, hold on to it and be possessive and stuff like that. Um, but for Capricorn, I think being ruled by Saturn, a lot of the times there is not actually a lot of stuff available to you necessarily because Saturn is the planet of no, it's the planet of denying you things. It's like, so you might not have quite as much to work with Saturn. But I think that puts the level of resourcefulness so far up for Capricorns where it's like they're making so much better use of their resources than a Taurus probably is because they're like, I don't have that much. So let me, like, that meme. I love this meme of Mariah Carey where she's like, I'm gonna do the best I can with what I got. Like,
Literally, like they make lemonade of life's lemons
yeah, and
type
it's
shit.
like, all right, and they might not even have lemons. Like they might, so they have to get real creative and real resourceful with what they create and what they build. Like it's just like when you have a lot, you can take it for granted. So when you don't have a lot, it's like I'm gonna use everything I can, like make the best use of what
Yeah.
I have.
Practicality is like knowing how to maneuver the world around you, knowing like, you know, how to use your or how to use what you have to maximize what you can have.
Mhm.
And that's so funny that literally Capricorn is a sea goat because like they're not just like a regular goat, they also like know the ocean, they know the water,
Yeah,
they know like they know how to swim, they know how to maneuver the world, not just
right.
like the land, you know? Like,
Exactly. And like, yeah, like that's the only earth sign that's like that has that little
yeah.
like, why are you a seagull? Like
That's so random. I
who
was
even
thinking
needed
that.
to be a seagull? But
Literally.
Capricorn.
So,
Um,
and I feel like that's telling of Capricorn and what it's like capable of, you know?
yes,
Mhm.
capable. Like if one thing Capricorn is, it's capable. Yeah, so I think about that. What else did I want to do? Oh yeah, so I have two Capricorn sisters. It's interesting because actually all of my sisters from me up, so not my younger sisters, but from me up, we are all earth signs. Like I'm the Taurus, and then I have two Capricorn older sisters, and then one Virgo older sister.
Oh
But
my
anyways,
God.
I asked one of my Capricorn sisters to give me some Capricorn statements, and this is just a few things that I feel like again add to this. It's like ambitious, motivated, independent.
Mhm.
And she's actually a Cancer moon, I believe. I don't know. She's kind of like, I don't know how, I don't have her confirmed birth time, but I just think that when it comes to the earthly experience, there is a level of like hard work and commitment that allows Capricorns to just be successful. And that's not to say every Capricorn is successful, but I will say that I just notice a lot of people who are like famous and like work hard are Capricorns, like
Yeah.
LeBron James or like Michelle Obama or like
Hmm.
um I don't know. I just feel like I'm always coming across these Capricorns like they really be dominating. They're dominating in their fields always because that
Yeah.
mastery just is always gonna like bring them to that level.
Yeah. Wait, did you ever watch Grey's Anatomy?
No, I didn't, but I'm familiar with the
Oh,
characters a little bit.
for like my cultural reference, I was thinking of Christina Yang in Grey's Anatomy, and she is like she's played by Sandra Oh. So yeah, I was just thinking of Grey's Anatomy, and I was thinking of Christina's character, and Christina's like very like goal like she only cares about being the best doctor like there, and at the very beginning like she didn't want to make any friends, she didn't fuck with anyone, she's very like cold and she's very like blunt, and she doesn't really like necessarily she doesn't like tiptoe, she doesn't like try to like protect people's feelings, but then she becomes best friends with Meredith Grey. Like seeing her interact with Meredith, it's like the way that she loves her is so practical. Like she loves her by like making sure that when she's like depressed and can't get out of bed that she goes to work. Like she's like, you're not losing your job, like you won't do like
Yeah.
like, and that's because to her like that's the most important thing, so like she's like you, and like she knows that to Meredith it is too, like so
Mhm.
she's just always she shows up for her in such like practical ways, and I'm just like, if you were my best friend I would literally be so upset, but but like I feel like for Meredith it's exactly what she needs, because like for all of them, they're doctors, like this is what they want, this is like their dream, so um she's very like the way in which she shows up for these people are like very, I mean, is very Capricorn to me. I don't know, just like her character in general. Like she's like not at all like concerned about her romantic prospects, and the way in which she interacts with her um romantic partners with throughout the show is very like business partnery and like can be. And I
Mhm.
feel like that can be kind of Capricornian in the way, like at the beginning, the way that they like approach it. They're like, what can you bring to the table? Like what are you bringing in? Like, they're very like
I feel like they're self-assured. I feel like they're very like they have a I think it might be the sort of respect that they kind of command. I think they command a lot of
yeah.
respect in their presence. And it's like
Yeah, and
so
she
when they
definitely does.
yeah, so like when they like talk about things, even if they're not talking about things that are business or career focused, it's just a level of like authority, like, excuse me,
Exactly.
like
And
this is
I feel
my
like that's
shit.
such a big thing for Capricorns. It's like knowing what you bring to the table, and
Hmm.
like you're like you have to like max this or be better, like otherwise what am I doing here? I'm wasting my time, this is my
Yeah,
earthly realm, like don't waste my time.
exactly.
Like what I
Don't
mean,
waste
like
my time. Like I feel like Taurus is like,
exactly,
don't rush me, and then Capricorn's like, don't waste my time.
don't waste my precious time.
Probably saying it to a Taurus as a person with the Capricorn moon boyfriend who is like, hurry up.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. And I feel like, like on other aspects of Capricorn, Capricorns are honestly like so funny. Like a lot of the time, and their humor is it's not like a sensitive humor. Like they're not gonna like, like they are so funny in the way that they just do not give a fuck. Like, and I feel like
No,
that's
it's
very Christina Yang. Like her sense of humor was like it was always very like mean. Like, but like everyone laughed at her. Like there's no way you watched Grey's Anatomy and didn't think Christina Yang was fucking hilarious. Like she's so funny, and I feel like that's like very Capricorn energy. Like she did command that respect, and like everyone was scared of her, but at the same time, like she has that, like she's just like, I think a lot of their humor is like very like smart ass, like very
Yes.
like
Oh,
it's that
smart
kind of
ass.
thing. Exactly, but
That is
it's like
it.
so fucking like it's hilarious because they're just so fucking intelligent most of the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's smart assy. It's because I think their relationship to like Saturnian themes, like Saturn is just, it can be dark. It is dark. Like
Yeah.
it's grim. And I think it's very, I was thinking a lot about Capricorn and Scorpios as the malefic ruled sort of signs. And obviously like Aries and Aquarius too, but I think Capricorn and Scorpios both have commonalities in the sense that I do think usually for Capricorns too, like they have to grow up quick. Like shit happens to them typically. Like I remember I saw this tweet and it's like, if astrology isn't real, then why were all Capricorns raised like this? Because like
Literally.
they, it's like they're being, usually their experience is in some way or form one of like lack. Like they just don't, like there's just like they don't have everything that you would need to kind of
Yeah.
be successful. Like there's something that they just don't have, or like
Yeah.
um they just might be exposed to just harsher elements of life. And I think Scorpio
Yes.
is similar because Mars is their ruler and Mars is also going to expose Mars ruled signs to harsher elements of life. But I think Scorpios being a water sign, their reaction is much more like, I think can be a little bit more like we said, just sitting in the emotional sort of
Internal.
turmoil, like internal emotional turmoil. And I think Saturn, or for Capricorn, it's kind of like, yeah,
They use that to like
they
get
use it to motivate
where they
them. And
need to
there's
go.
also like a so what? Like it's kind of like, it's like, yeah, life's like, this shit sucks. Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
Like they
That's
have,
so fucking true. And it kind of it makes them like a little jaded, but to a point where they know that like this is life and this is the reality of their life.
right, the
And they can
reality.
either like sit and cry about it or they can do something about it. Um
Exactly. And I think that's like
and
the cardinal earth nature of Capricorn is like, like, yeah, this shit sucks. I've been new. Like that's they probably telling Scorpio, yeah, like, hello, duh. It sucks
yeah, it
here.
sucks.
It sucks that we are here, duh. So like, but like, what's the point? And what's the point? I think they're always thinking
Yeah.
about what's the point. Is it efficient for me to sit here and just be like, oh, life sucks? Or is it efficient for me to be like, life sucks and I'm still gonna do what I need to do to
Yeah.
get
I feel okay, that brings me into my example
example?
of
Okay.
um Cancer and Capricorn, but I'll just start off with a little bit of like a um explanation. So the book is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. The main character, Evelyn Hugo, she's a big celebrity and it follows like it goes through her life basically throughout the book. But it's like told in the future, like in the present at her current age, and it goes back to when she was little. So she gets someone to write a biography about her basically. And when you learn about her like early stages of life, you learn that she was really, really close with her mom. They were really close, and then her mom died at a really young age. And then she was only living with her father, who was like an alcoholic, and like they were like struggling to pay rent and stuff. And she was like, I think 13, 14. She was like, I'm not living like this. Like she was like, I can't do this. And so
Mm.
basically like she kind of finesses men to get where she needs to go. She ends up going to California randomly, and then she's like, I can fucking act if I want to. Like she's just like, I can be an actress. She turns out to be this huge movie star, like everyone, like she's very well known. And she's like the Betty White, I guess, but like not even like more like a Marilyn Monroe if Marilyn Monroe got to be old. She's like the sex
Okay.
symbol, and she eventually like just like mastered her craft of acting, but
Mm.
she did not know how to act at all. But yeah, so basically it follows like her life, and she has a love interest that I believe, based on a few things, to have been a Cancer. So I thought this is a good example of both. So they're like in a fight right now. And if you haven't read the book and want to read it, I suggest like skipping class because this is kind of a really good part. So she goes, um, so the girl who I believe is a Cancer, her name is Celia. So she said, I loved you so much that I thought you were the meaning of my life. Celia said, crying. I thought that people were put on earth to find other people, and I was put here to find you and touch your skin and smell your breath and hear all your thoughts. But I don't think that's true anymore. She wiped her eyes because I don't want to be meant for someone like you. So that was like the little Cancer part.
Okay.
And then the main character says, um, she says, the searing pain in my chest felt like water boiling. You know what? You're right. You aren't meant for someone like me, I said finally, because I'm willing to do what it takes to make a world for us, and you're too chicken shit. You won't make the hard decisions. You aren't willing to do the ugly stuff, but I've always known that. But I thought you'd at least have the decency to admit you need someone like me. You need someone who will get her hands dirty to protect you. You want to play like you're all high and mighty all the time. We'll try doing that without someone in the trenches protecting you. And I feel like that was very that was the Capricorn part, obviously. I also have another quote of when she fell in love with this girl. And she says, I wanted to give her a lot of things. I wanted what I had to be hers. I wondered if this is what it felt like to love someone. I already knew what it meant to be in love with someone. I'd felt it and I'd acted it. But to love someone, to care for them, to throw your lot in with theirs, and to think whatever happens, it's you and me. I feel like after, like, when I was reading this, I was like, I was stuck between Leo and Capricorn because I think that she has both qualities kind of. But I think that the way that she made herself out of nothing, and she was very she's very intelligent. She kind of like didn't have any guidance. She just like got herself through everything, and she went through some really shitty ass times, but she never like let it stop her. Like she just always knew like what she wanted her life to look like, and she didn't let anything like interrupt that for her. And then like I think that for Leo, like being a celebrity how she was, I feel like it would have been more of like a, oh, like this is my dream, like I love, like I don't know, but for her it was kind of just like, well, this is gonna make me the most money, so I'm gonna just
Right.
do
It's
it and
like I
literally
did what I had
dedicate
to
my whole
do.
life to it. Exactly.
Yeah.
And just like her, the way that she was within her relationship with this person was very, like, it was almost like cold in the way that she would talk to her, like in their dialogue, but like you would understand, like based on the narration, what she was feeling, and it was like love. It was, she
Mhm.
loved her, but the way that she would like talk
Express
to
it.
Celia was like she was like a child, like she was naive, and like she wouldn't do like the hard things. So Evelyn always felt like it was her responsibility to protect her in that way. It was like they were kind of together during, like, I believe it was the 50s. So it was like there wasn't a reality in which they could be out about their relationship. So she would always be willing to like make these sacrifices and do all these things to keep up this facade. And Celia kind of saw it as like, oh, like you just don't care enough, you're just scared, like whatever. And she's like, no, you're just not being realistic. Like she's like, in
Mhm.
order for us to have this beautiful life that I want to have with you, we need to be real and we need to like actually she's like, we need to build what we have. Like she's like, we need to work, like make our money, make buy our houses. And like she's like, do you want to keep all this stuff that we have, like, you know? And like for Celia, it was so like, it was so jolt, like she was just like, oh my god, you're evil. Like she's just like, why can't you, like she was just like, no, like you're just not like,
She's like, we need to be fucking for real.
yeah,
Like,
literally.
let's
And you like kind of, I feel like within this episode I can like kind of empathize with Evelyn more. I think when I was reading it I was like, oh, just do it. Just like let yourself go, like whatever. But I feel like realistically like that wasn't possible at the time. Obviously for like fucked up reasons back then, but like also like when they would like see, like they saw the Stonewall riots on TV and stuff, and Celia was like, we need to get out there, like we need to do something. And Evelyn was like, no, like we can't. Like, she was like, that's just selfish, because then we would just be bringing the attention to us, not what they're fighting for. She's like, you know what we can do? We can give them money. We can give them resources. That's like what she like. And it's just like so like interesting to understand her as a Capricorn now. And I don't know, like I feel like all of this stuff is very like Capricorn Saturnian energy of like wanting to provide for the one that you love, and wanting to like live with your feet on the ground, and not like be like, their love isn't like a dreamy like hopeful, like it's like, no, like let's live the best life we can live on this planet, like.
Right. We need that, I think. And it definitely can go just unappreciated, I think, because I think for Capricorns, that is their emotional labor typically is physical. Their emotional labor typically is tangible.
Physical
And
labor.
right.
They
And
literally
it's like it's both. Like this is how they're showing their emotions through these actions. As someone who has a boyfriend whose moon is in Capricorn, like the way that he cares is very tangible. It's very like being there for you, doing the things that you don't want to do, like, and I be eating it up because I'm just like, yeah,
yeah.
like this is exactly what I need. I think being a Taurus sun, I'm like, yeah, like
Yeah.
that's absolutely something that's important for me. But I can also, I think it might not always show up quite as like passionate or like
Yeah.
quite as like, just emotionally expressive in the terms of like
Yeah.
opening up your heart. Like it's more like opening up his bank account. Like
Yeah, exactly.
but but yeah, like so it's like it's important to just I think when you're dealing with Capricorn placements to be able to recognize the ways that they're showing up for you because I guarantee you they're showing up for you in so many ways. But
Yeah.
it's just not it might not feel as like
Emotionally attached, or
yeah,
like,
it might not be in a way that like, you know, it's not like poetry, right? It's not like something that's gonna like make you like, oh my God, like look at the
yeah.
way, look at how much you love me. It's more like you might have to sit and be like, oh wow, they actually they actually like did XYZ. Like they like showed up for me. They made sure I ate. They made sure I like, you know, survived. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's because they fucking love you.
Exactly.
So I think each earth sign has an interesting way they deal with their emotions. And I'm kind of playing around with different phrases. But with Taurus, remember I said like Tauruses can bury their emotions. And I think, other earth signs can do that too, to an extent. But I think Capricorns can handle their emotions. Like, and when I say handle, I don't mean like they can handle it, like they'll be good. I mean literally like it's a to-do list. Like check. Like, okay, felt that.
Felt that.
Like it's like they kind of like do this thing where it's like it's just treated as another task kind of, and that's how it can get a little tough for them, I think, emotionally, because they do have emotions. Remember we said Saturn has the most moons, right? I think they
Mhm.
do have um a lot of emotions and they know that they're there, but like they don't know how to tell people they're there. Like it's like
Yeah.
because they don't know how to be taken care of all the time. They're more of
Yeah.
like the caretaker. So it's like, oh, like you want me to tell you how I'm feeling? So what? What are you gonna do about it? Like I've
Mhm.
already like for them, it's like I've already dealt with how I'm feeling, or like I've already moved past it. Like, I'll be fine, whatever type of thing. Where
Yeah.
it's so they're not used to having like someone say, like, oh, like, how are you feeling? How can I help with how you're feeling? Like, that's
Yeah.
kind of a foreign sort of interaction for Capricorns because they're used to just dealing with shit themselves. Like, they can just figure it out.
Yeah. In my experience with Capricorn moons, like I do not doubt that the people that I know that are Capricorn moons go through a lot of stuff like
Mm-hmm.
mentally. I definitely think that, like, they have their struggles and their plights. But I think that the biggest thing that I would say, like the biggest pattern I've noticed is that they don't feel the need to burden other people with it. They just
Yes,
don't see what that would like do for you, like for
exactly.
you or for themselves. So
Right.
like oftentimes I feel like in a similar way to Cancer, like you can kind of like see how they're feeling. Like you can tell they're not okay. You can tell they're not doing well.
Yes.
But it's like I really like think that they just like struggle so much with allowing anyone to really like understand what they're feeling, or like I just don't think that they feel a need for it, so they're just like whatever. But
Yeah,
like it does, I
exactly.
think it affects them like very much so, like over time. Like I think that depression can become like a really big struggle for them if they don't like learn how to um like kind of ask for help when they do need it.
Just based off the things we're saying, I think what we're leading to is just the fact that for Capricorns, there is an attunement to material needs, but I think there can be a lack of attunement to emotional needs, which is, which is why I think Cancer can bring that in. So,
So
yeah,
that
that's a
I think
struggle.
covers some of their shadow aspects as well, like just like hyper independence sometimes,
Yeah.
and um just kind of like an emotional detachment. I think they could be cold,
Mm.
blunt.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I also feel like just like I'm still understanding Saturn, I'm still trying to understand Capricorns, honestly. I feel like there's probably more to them than I have really unearthed myself. And I think
Definitely
that's
than I have
because
too.
they're ruled by a planet that is just kind of it has so much that it's doing.
Okay, so with that, we can move into Cancer and Capricorn as an axis.
Yes, which I feel like we've kind of been doing. We've been hinting at
Yeah.
here and there. And when it comes to the axis, do you feel like you had any phrases?
I was with my cousin the other day and we were talking about how Cancer and Capricorn is the next episode. And she was like, "Oh, like I can't wait to hear about this one because like I don't know how you think like or how you guys are gonna explain like that they're alike at all." And like blah. She's like, "I feel like these are like the most different sister signs, like blah blah blah." And I was like, honestly, like I was like, I feel like yes, they go about things very differently, but I think that at the end of the day, when you think of Cancer and Capricorn, they're very much like they're the providers and the caretakers of the zodiac. They're the mama and the papa. So those are the words that I would say.
I think that Saturn and the moon being the two planets that rule these signs, right? Saturn ruling Capricorn and the moon ruling Cancer, they both, in terms of their similarities, have to do with time. Saturn, that longer amount of time, the time that it takes to grow up and become an adult and become an old person, and the wisdom that you get from that sort of time. And then the moon, in terms of like responding to our everyday needs, and like there's a time for feeding,
Yeah.
there's a time for sleeping, there's a time for, so it's kind of like it's more on the on the earthly realm in terms of like the everyday experience of time. The moon is really concerned with overseeing that and like taking us through the motions of what it means to be alive. And then Saturn is like, okay, and like over a longer amount of time in a much more sort of zoomed out way, I think.
I feel like that kind of connects to this phrase of like wisdom coming with memory, and how I feel like for Capricorn, like that wisdom that we were talking about, like from their life experiences, coming with like all of the memories of what you've lived throughout your life um already. And I feel like memory is very connected to Cancer, which is why I thought of that word. And
Mhm.
also thinking about it in terms of that like crab thing, how we were talking about like constantly going into a different like shell and like becoming, like becoming.
Mhm.
um I feel like that's like so like I feel like Cancer and Capricorn is very like it's an evolution.
What makes a life, right, is like the everyday sort of routine, the lived experience, the emotional roller coaster. Like I said, that's what it means to be alive. And like Capricorn is like, okay, like I've been through it a lot of times now, and so I can see, the the sort of longevity of it and the impermanence of it, right? Like we're always moving closer to death. And
Right.
so I think sometimes Capricorn might lose sight of like the emotional sort of ongoings of everyday life just because it's like I'm just thinking about the inevitability of time, right? So it's like I'm not gonna get on the emotional roller coaster every time, but Cancer can be like, well, that's why, that's what makes you you. Like that's what makes your experience here unique, because you went through the
Yeah.
emotional roller coaster every time, and you learned something new, and you felt something new, and you know.
Yeah.
And then I also thought about the quote from WandaVision, which everybody loves this quote. So I think this won't be the first time people have heard it. But when Vision asks, "What is grief if not love persevering?" I think love and grief are just very similar feelings, is basically, and that's what Vision is trying to say with this quote,
Yeah.
right? Like, I think we've both identified that this axis is one of care, right? They're both being caring in different ways, emotionally and materially or physically, right? And I think when it comes to, for Capricorns in particular, grief is just very, it can be very present in Capricorns' lives in some kind of way, right? And I think that comes with Saturn being this planet about grief and about loss. And so I think Capricorns move through the world knowing the inevitability of grief, right? Because they know that if you decide to live, you decide to love, you're deciding to grieve too. And I think with that understanding of mortality and of the fact that there will be loss, the way that they love is very persevering. And it's a love that it's like when you zoom out, you might not even realize how um just how foundational it is until much later. And so I'm bringing this back to like just thinking about being raised by my grandparents and just thinking about the structures and the things they instilled in me, both emotionally and from a values perspective and from a material perspective. Like these are things that I will benefit from probably for the next 40 to 60 years of my life, probably till the end of my life. And so much so that I will be able to give that love probably to like to the people that come after me, right? And I think that it just made me think a lot about the way that Capricorns love, but also how for Cancers, um, that love is showing up on a daily basis, right? So it's like you need that emotional attunement that Cancer provides in order to be able to have the zoomed out love that makes it worth it.
They're hand in hand. You
Yeah.
need both of them. And I feel like that's like uh I feel like Cancer and Capricorn is very much like, I hate to say this is so cis heteronormative, but like the traditional parent roles
Mm-hmm.
of like, that the everyday nurturing mom figure. And then like I'm thinking of this in a traditional sense, so also like personal to me. Like I think that like the way in which my father shows up is very Capricorn. Like it's very like I want to leave behind as much as I can so that you have this like, this persevering love.
Mm-hmm.
But my mom shows up like in everyday emotional nurturing ways.
Mm-hmm.
So for me at the moment, that feels like, oh, I'm so loved by my mother. And like maybe like, like with that experience, like it's
Yeah.
something that you see kind of later in life. That's maybe
Mm-hmm.
something that I will feel like as well. But I feel like that's so like the axis itself is just like the your parents like and like sometimes you need both of them, whether or not that's in two different people or just like one person to show up
Mm-hmm.
for you in
Mm-hmm.
both ways,
Yeah,
but
you
you
need
need
both
that like,
energies.
yeah, and you need that like practical like nature too, aside from like the emotional stuff is great, it's very nourishing, it's what they need every day, but like that practical side of it of like, oh, like I am going to give you everything you need on this material realm, is also like very fucking like it's a privilege to have in
Mm-hmm.
general. With your quote, um, I also feel like aside from care, it also like showed like the axis of time, like like grief and
Yes.
like love, like it's like very much like the transcendent nature of time, both time and love.
Mm.
And I thought that was like really beautiful. I remember hearing that like a quote like that. I never watched WandaVision,
Mm-hmm.
but I remember when my friend passed away, hearing like my sibling told me a quote like that was basically like that grief is your love, like continuing.
Mm-hmm.
And that like completely shifted the way in which I like viewed it, because obviously it was something that I was like, ew, like I don't want to experience this, but like at the same time, like it's like a beautiful thing to love someone so much that you grieve them. It feels bad, but like in the long run it benefits you, and I think that's very Capricorn Saturnian energy.
Mm-hmm.
um
Well, even when you think about grief as like, I don't know, for me, grief is a lot about like replaying memories and longing for and like the nostalgia and like feeling like, oh, I'm never going to be able to get that moment back. And like just how I think Cancer and Capricorn are very connected to grief.
Great.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
they both have an awareness of like, yeah, like I think that's why Capricorn, I mean, that's why Cancers can hold their memories and so close. It's like having that memory is like the it's love persevering. To remember is love persevering, just like grieving is
Exactly.
love persevering.
And
Um,
obviously, like, grief can be felt even if there wasn't like a death. And I feel
yeah.
like how you said, like, that Capricorns, like, kind of like have this like relationship with grief. I definitely think Cancers do too. Like, in the way in which, like, it transforms them after experiencing any form of grief. Just like, like Cancers being so in touch with their emotions and like experiencing hurt in any way that like to them could be grief, like heartbreak or like losing a friend or like
Mhm.
stuff like that.
Most people think grief is just about like immortality and physical death, but like you can grieve a future that you thought you were gonna have.
Yeah.
Like it's grief and time. There's an essay to be written about grief, time, love, and memories.
Yes.
Time is kind of the connecting force because whether it's the future or the past, it's still time, right? And while time is always moving forward, Cancer reminds us that you can actually, through a memory, you don't always have to, time is not necessarily as linear as it might appear through the power of memory, through the power of some of these things, right?
I think that the axis being like these like parents, how we've like kind of like seen them or identified them sort of, um they both understand the importance of leaving behind something beyond your time here. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that for Capricorn, that is very tangible and practical. It's like stuff to leave behind on this earthly realm. And I think that for Cancer, it's the everyday emotional nourishment, it's the everyday care and love. And that, like, what that, provides for a human being is something that will never leave them. Like what you learned about love through another person, that stays with you and that transcends time in the same way that, the physical stuff can.
They can, I think Capricorn can look in the long term and say, how can I establish, a legacy of, it can be a legacy of love. It could be more material, but I think that it might not just be material because Saturn can also provide like lessons that can take you very far in life and
Right.
just things that will last beyond their presence in the physical realm that allows them to stay connected to the future generations that will come after them. And then Cancer coming at it from the memory standpoint of like passing down memories, they're both kind of keeping the connection between, you know, those who have yet to come and those who have passed on together. And like how that love can continue on a daily basis by telling memories, by leaving legacies.
What you were just saying kind of made me think about also how how our DNA remembers things that our ancestors have experienced, like generational trauma can be passed down and stuff. And I feel like experiences like lacking in a material world actually alter your like DNA, and like that
Mm,
is passed down through your generation. So that was like really interesting thinking about that connection.
mhm.
And I feel like that's all like memory too. Um,
Yeah, like
so
memory being stored in the body and memory
yeah.
being, shared. And you don't really get to the Saturn part unless you remember. Like in order to get to that part of life where you have the wisdom and you have the lessons that you've learned from your life and you can pass them down. You have to remember what you went through. You have to remember the emotional sort of experience of things, and then through that you can leave your legacy of love.
Yeah.
I keep on saying a legacy of love. I guess it could be a legacy of terrible
Legacy of
things.
love. What they want to leave behind are resources, right?
Mhm.
Like, and whatever that might mean. And you were the one that actually taught me to look at resources differently and to understand them as things that we hold dear to us and love and value.
Mm,
And I feel like that is for both of them. That's what they want ultimately,
yeah,
is to provide resources to
yeah.
those that they love and stuff. So yeah, so like, what do these signs have to offer us and the world in general?
They both kind of give me an understanding of time in different ways, right? Long-term time and just like the everyday motions of time. And I thought about this quote, and I thought it was honestly not from anything, or I thought it was like just a quote in society, but it's actually a quote from the Bible. And it's from Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 4. And it goes like, to everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. And it goes on. But I don't know, they both kind of just remind me of like the simultaneity of time and the fact that like at the same time that there's like on a daily basis, right? You know, one day I'm feeling this way, the next day I'm feeling this way, the moon's moving around and I'm responding to these different elements of life. Um, that that is what it means to be alive. Like to be responding to the different things that are occurring, to be emotionally invested and just emotionally responsible for yourself and for your interactions. And then what Saturn reminds me about time is just that I also don't have to get too attached to what's happening in the current moment, right? Like, because in the grand scheme of things, this is just going to be a page out of your book. It's like realizing that your emotional experience of something on a day to day in the grand scheme of things might mean something different. Not to say it won't be as important or that it's like not to minimize it, but it just might not mean what it means in the moment and kind of being
Yeah.
able to be like, okay,
Yeah, and I feel like that's probably what Capricorns be thinking. They're like, okay, this isn't gonna matter to me in 5 years, so might as well stop feeling it.
yes, yes. But I think there's still, like I said, a time to weep, a time to
I mean, they
mourn.
definly should.
Yeah,
I
and
like I liked the time to break down and a time to build up because I think that's both of them.
mm,
Yeah, I feel like they teach the importance of family, of whether that's biological or chosen family,
mhm,
um, of like showing up for those that you love, however that may be, however you know how, or however you want to learn how.
mhm,
um, they both teach me, I feel like, how deep you can love and be loved and
mm,
experience love, and how whether that be a delayed understanding of it or a like
moment to moment.
a moment to moment thing.
Right. It's like the love, like when you say deep, I think it transcends time. Like it's like this
Yeah,
idea of like a love that is timeless in a sense.
yeah, yeah. I literally wrote an axis of time, the timelessness of love.
Yes.
Okay, so what do you think that Cancer can learn from Capricorn?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one we didn't cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what Cancer can learn from Capricorn is something I think we can all learn from Capricorn, honestly, but Cancer in particular, obviously boundaries, understanding. It's hard to treat your emotions in the logistical sort of practical way if you're a Cancer, I think, because they're meant to be felt, not to be like managed. But if you take on that perspective for a moment, you can realize that you cannot pour from an empty cup. And I think
Mhm.
that is a very like practical thing, right? And if you think about that emotionally, if you don't pour time into your own emotional nourishment, then it will be very difficult for you to nourish others. Capricorn can teach Cancer the resourcefulness. You have to think resourcefully about how you know, expend yourself emotionally. And so
Mhm.
being able to just instill limits in your emotional endeavors.
Yeah, I think Capricorn can also teach Cancer the value of your time and like how much time you're putting into like other people and other things rather than like what you need or your own needs. Because they have such a huge capacity for love. I think that they also, of course, want to receive that same thing back. But I think that a big lesson for them is understanding that first of all, other people will not always be able to meet your needs the way that you can meet your own needs.
Mhm.
Um, Other people will not be able to meet your needs the way that you can meet their needs sometimes. And I think for Cancer, it's important for them to put as much time into themselves and meeting their needs and caring for themselves and loving themselves as they do for those around them.
I think that the boundaries that Capricorn can teach Cancer will actually help Cancer to receive the love they're looking for. Because the thing is, when you love without boundaries, you can overexert yourself. You can pour into people who are not going to pour into you. You can continue to pour from that empty cup, and then you don't have anything left to pour, and it feels like you're beaten down to the point of exhaustion, right? But if you're more strategic in how you pour your cup, right? Which Capricorn can be like, I'm not gonna like I'm not going to pour myself into this person and expect them to pour back into me when they've already proven that they can't, right?
Yeah.
So like basically boundaries can really step up your emotional investment and your emotional reception, right? Like, and I think that's what Cancer wants. It wants to be emotionally invested in things, but if you do it without boundaries, then it can be feel like emotional depletion.
And eventually, obviously, that like loving with a lack of boundaries will lead to resentment and
Mm-hmm.
like those things you don't want to feel when like giving love or receiving love from
Exactly.
someone.
Capricorns can learn from Cancers that it's always worth it to get on the emotional roller coaster because, like, I think Capricorns might feel like, why should I get on that? There's no point. It's not going to resolve anything. It's not going to lead anywhere. But, like, Cancer knows that, like, it absolutely will. Like, it definitely, like, just because it's a roller coaster doesn't mean you always take away the same takeaway. Like you're growing through the roller coaster. It's like
Yeah.
through that emotional experience, you get to learn more about yourself. You get the lessons, you get the memories. Like you
Yeah.
have something. That's how you build your legacy through the emotional roller coaster you have to get on every time.
Like another thing Capricorns can learn from Cancers is understanding and learning to show up for the people you love in the way that they need and not necessarily just in the tangible practical stuff.
Mhm.
Being like or trying to attune to another person's emotions or experience in general to
Mhm.
understand them better and to show up for them.
Yes, exactly. And think about how much more foundational that love will be. Like as if you're a Capricorn and you want to build something that's long standing, like or something that perseveres, that stands the test of time, that's timeless in a way, then it can be so much more efficient and powerful if it's attuned to their needs. Like if someone loves me in a way that is actually
Exactly.
acknowledging of like my love language and what I need, that's something I'm going to remember for a long time. And that's something that I'm going to pass down. So that's a structure. That's a structure of care that I
Yeah,
will continue, right?
exactly.
So I think they both are very much like they can both together, they can establish structures of care that are timeless.
Yes. I think that if Capricorn put in as much time and energy as they do to those who they deem worthy, that they could really heal so much about themselves. And I feel like that's also a big part, is like deeming themselves worthy, is like being able to acknowledge that like they, like their hardships and their emotions and all of like that, like they themselves are worthy of their time and energy. They're just as important as whatever it is your next goal is.
If you emotionally invest as much as you materially exert, then you can probably reap some great benefits of what you've sown into that emotional investment in yourself.
They're like, they both have so much to that they can learn from each other, and so much to offer us and the world in general. And
yeah,
when we're done listening to this, let's go tell the Capricorn and Cancer placements in our life how much we love and appreciate them.
yeah, because I think they both kind
All
of
they
can
do
get
for us.
stepped on and taken for granted.
Yeah.
So
And they really like, they really do a lot. Like they really show up for us in the ways that like we might not even notice, we might not think twice about, but like they do. So
yeah. So I think that kind of wraps up everything we have to say on the axis. I hope that this
yes.
was helpful. I know that we have some Cancer Capricorn listeners, so I'm curious to know how they feel about it. But
Yeah.
we'll be back soon with another episode, moving into the Aquarius Leo axis. So
Yes, thank you all so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode of our take on Cancer and Capricorn. It was definitely fun to get into that energy and try to like understand them a little bit more.
yeah,
Um, Always a privilege.
always a privilege. We will see you next time.